I think there is this overwhelming feeling when you're a creative person that you're only as good as your last project. And that first mile, I find, is where that mental narrative and those stories come up the most, where you're like, something about this video and this project isn't clicking right now. And it's making me feel like I'm not as good as I used to be, that I can't produce this result for the client. And then it kind of gets in the way of being productive.
All right, Mose. Well, we just had a banger podcast. Doing 2 in
Bang.
a day. Just batching
It's a
these bad
good day
boys.
when I don't have to record 2 in a week.
Really good podcast with Dave. You guys, it's already out now, so you guys I'm sure you will enjoy it. But we wanted to hop on today and just do another episode. And I wanted this to be a little therapy session, Mose, because I think
for you or for me?
I mean, I don't really ask. Like, I usually don't really
I
care.
don't care about your personal life, dude.
I'm a little bit of a narcissist. It's a problem, and I feel like I need to ask more about your life. But I'm going through some stuff, and I feel
Really?
like when I look at you as a person, and I don't big up you enough, but when I do,
Whoa,
I do a
hold
big.
on. Somebody clip this.
I do a big, and you're a guy I go to, and I feel like you would have been a great psychologist.
Definitely, I'm into the human behavior piece, so that's part of it. I don't care enough about people.
No, you care quite a lot. It wouldn't seem like you do, to be honest, the way you text, but you are great.
Okay. We'll ignore the texting shot because you're the king of
Insulting. Okay, so with in Canada, the lockdowns are kind of loosening, and there's a lot more work coming on. I've been fucking overwhelmed like crazy, and I don't really have like the energy at times to like take on all these projects and like manage all the stress of it all. Like, do you remember what it was like pre-COVID, how busy it was?
It was insane. Yeah. Everyone thought that you were a psychopath because nobody saw you. The default was, oh, Will's working. Why isn't Will here? He's working. He's on a shoot. He's in some hockey rink 45 minutes outside of Toronto doing some minor hockey game, which just sounds so not glamorous, but I mean, you're making that bag.
It sounds so not good, but the content was so fun to shoot. I was making money and I was having fun with it, and I had energy. Even when like the grindy days happened, like I always would get it done and it was fine. But these days it's been so hard to like I'm waking up some days, I'm like, I don't want to do anything. Even though I have so much going on, I don't know what it is. Like, I'm waking up unmotivated and lacking. It feels like I'm lacking like a meaning or purpose to get up and go do shit. Like, are you getting that feeling at all?
Well, I am, but it's for a completely different reason that we've talked about before. And that's that I sleep in a basement, and when I wake up, it's just pitch black. And it is by far the worst possible way that somebody could wake up.
Like, you just have that sliver window, like at the
Not
top.
not even a sliver window. I just get light under the door that kind of comes in, and I'm like, oh my God, another day.
See, I have two windows, but even then it just feels like I wake up and I don't know where to start.
Another day on this planet.
I think the hardest thing is that I'm noticing is like there's a lot of phone calls about stuff too, and those just drag the energy like out of me. You know what I mean? Like, you have so much creative energy for a certain period of time, and it's like, how many times can you hop on the phone to talk about something?
Yeah.
Before it's like, are we just diminishing returns?
What are we doing here? And part of me thinks, and there's no exact number or science to this, but whenever you have a gut feeling, or you just know that there's going to be a lot of phone calls and meetings, Zoom meetings especially, on a project, like, just add 20% to whatever price that you're going to give. Because that work is just like, the phone calls is never billed. You would never bill a phone call, but like, you can't do anything else on that phone call. Why would you not want to bill that time? That's my rule of thumb. I don't know what the number of phone calls is, but just add 20% to whatever you're charging. But maybe that's an oversimplification. I'm just saying that
I know what you're saying.
That's what's going to drain you.
You're making a greater point. It's like the work that when you have a new client that comes on, it's not just, and they oftentimes, this is what they think it is. Yo, I want this video done. And you go, okay, yeah, we can do some videos. And they're like, okay, these are the details. This is what I want. I'm like, okay, let's hop on a phone call. We figure out the details of what they want. Then I give my perspective of how we can make this, the best experience for them. Then I have to write, that's maybe a 30-minute phone call, 20-minute phone call. Then I have to write all the stuff we have to do. Then I have to plan the shots, organize the gear, go shoot, come back, edit, talk more about like how they want the
I
deliverable and
want
whatnot.
something changed. I want the type changed. That shot is on too long.
And it takes so much time, and I don't know if I'm not billing for a lot of this,
You're
but
just doing it
already
for free, technically.
technically, but the weird thing is I'm already charging a lot and they're already trying to get the price down,
Yeah.
which is fair. But it's like, at what point am I doing more work than what I'm getting paid for? You know, you get, usually when you work a salary job, you work 40 hours a week, let's say 40 to 50, and you know, you're doing a lot of mini jobs and stuff and you're getting paid for that. But when you're freelancing, they're just paying you for the service that, you know, you sell. And
Mm-hmm.
that service, what they think is just shooting and editing.
Yeah.
But it's not just that.
Yeah.
And that's what's fucking draining me is I'm getting a lot of new projects, people saying, hey, I want this thing, I want this thing. And I get trapped in my head where I go, I just say yes because I want to get work. I haven't had work in so long. Or I had work, but it just wasn't this intense. So I'm just saying yes to everything, this scarcity mentality. And I'm not taking into account that saying yes to a project doesn't just mean, oh, we're going to shoot and edit this thing. It's like, no, I have to plan out, I have to write what my vision is. I have to study other people's videos and see what inspiration I can draw from to make this video special. And I'm finding that my output is just terrible. I've been hopping on some calls and I'm like leaving that call like I did not help this person very well. I did not put in my full effort to like actually set up this project for success. I
And
was just saying
what would you say
yes
the challenge was there? Like, why did you leave that meeting with the feeling that you left something on the table or that you could have been better?
because my mind's in a million places.
Okay.
Because I've done these phone calls at a good job for 2 or 3 projects before these guys reached out. So now I'm on another one like, yeah, I'll just say yes. And I didn't, because I have so many other things I'm thinking about, I didn't take the time on that project or that phone call to give the same amount of attention.
Great. Yeah. So it's feeling overextended.
Feeling really overextended. And you know what another thing is with COVID? A lot of things are up in the air. It's like we're waiting for this website to be done. We're waiting for this photo shoot to have the photos to me.
Yeah.
Or, oh, we're waiting for like the day that we can shoot. And you're just kind of moving your life, moving forward. I'm moving forward in my life in this like, okay, when that's done, then we can do this. So I'm like jumping in and out of focus from one project's like ideas to another because I can't fully commit to one because we're waiting for this thing that has to be done. And when that happens, I start to get overwhelmed. I don't have a coping mechanism like to go play sports or do something it really feels this. It's a feeling of like being trapped. Like I feel fucking trapped in my mind where I can start things, I know what I have to do, but as I'm doing them, I'm like, I have to do these other things. And my focus isn't like directly in direct. And it's made me question, do I want to freelance again? Like, was I just in this momentum state pre-COVID that I built up to that I thought I wanted? Do I want to be an employee? It's really been like opening some questions in my like, you know, it's been opening questions of who do I really want to be? Who really am I? And it's really scary because I can't tell if it's the pandemic that's been doing this to me, which I think it is, or is it my life changing and that I think I'm better off in a structured environment with an employer.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think there are pieces of a lot of the things that you mentioned in there. Like you not having the release valve on the end where like, okay, I am done with work. I can set a clear boundary that if I go play hockey, it's so obvious when I'm playing hockey that this is not work. And I talk to all these people, like family members, creative people that I work with, friends, whatever. And they're like, one of the best things about this COVID work from home situation, and also one of the worst things about this COVID work from home situation is that there's no boundary between I'm on the clock, I'm working, I'm on my computer, and then you might have dinner, and then you're back on the computer because you want to watch Netflix, but then you're also kind of doing work on the side, and it gets really messy because there's no hard shut off. There's no, okay, I'm just gonna chill for the night. I'm just gonna release from work. And what happens, because I've been guilty of this too. What I've seen happening is that if you take the extra, for me, it's like I walk my dog, I have dinner. That wraps up around, we'll call it like what, 7:30. if I go back and get into work after that 7:30, I find that I'm not recharged the next morning, and that just kind of carries over, and then it's just a bad cycle. So it sounds like a little bit of that, but it's also sounding like you are running into a wall of sorts with the business model of freelancing, where you're like, the reason that I got into this in the first place is that I love doing this work. I can charge more per client just because I'm a specialist and I'm not working through some organization. Like, you're doing all the marketing, finding clients and that. So you got to charge more. But you're also saying that there's a limit to how many people I can work with and feel like I'm doing a good job. And that also you have all these other things bleeding in, so that when you're working on the project, you're like, well, I have to go call person X. I got to go call Jimmy about his video that's still up in the air. I got to manage and check in with this other project that's already kind of in progress. And all of those little, like, the things that are kind of orbiting around are getting in the way of feeling productive when you're working on stuff. And that's a business challenge. I say this so often with whenever you're struggling freelancing or something's not going right. I think the tendency is to look and say the creative or what I am producing, the end deliverable, there's some friction there. There's something that I don't like, but all of it, most often, this doesn't apply 100% of the time, but most often it's a business challenge. I can't be in 100 places at once. I feel like I'm overextended, or a million different other things. So, I mean, it's a tough place to be. And it raises some questions about, like, do I want to do this model where I'm only working one-on-one and my hands have to be in this project or else the work doesn't go on? Or could it be a situation where maybe you can delegate, maybe you can figure out some systems around taking your hands off the work?
I was just about to interject saying everything you're describing and everything I'm describing is, dude, you were delegating pre-COVID and you're getting to a point where you're going to have to delegate again. And maybe this is something that I was blindsided to because I haven't done it so long. I just need to reach out to the people that are my friends who are very talented, who can come in, step in, and actually help with these projects. And there's tons of guys that I think I could reach out to, which I'm not. And maybe I'm at that point again where I need to delegate. And it's like, buddy, let's go. You did it before. Why is
Why is it so scary now? And we were talking earlier that, like, the people in your network, you can say names or you can't say names. It's up to you. But the people kind of in your network that have freelanced or helped you out before, those people have gotten so much better since you had worked with them originally. You're like, wow, this work has gotten, you could put them side by side a year and a half ago to right now and say, like, wow, these are two completely different things. This one right now is so much better than you were a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, one of the guys I worked with a bunch was Ryan Ward. He's been producing content. He did a Raina piece. This amazing athlete, this girl who's like played U Sports, which is Canadian University football on the men's team. Savage. Also, really nice girl. I've talked to her a couple of times on IG. He made a great piece for her, and then did a good piece. I think he's working on for this Ryerson basketball player. I need to reach out to him again because he's not only is he really talented, but he's like a friend, and he's just like, he's on it, man. He gets shit done when he needs to. I definitely need to reach out to him. But you know what the problem is also is with COVID, it's hard to like meet up with people, give them a hard drive, meet up with people, do this thing. Like getting the assets to people and the collaboration, the collaboration workflow is just, it's been put on pause, or giant barriers have been added.
I would say that people would be amazed how much extra work goes in when you can't hand off a hard drive, because you'll spend, like, I'm no joke, you will spend hours downloading something off Google Drive. Like, it's not just like, oh, there's whatever, we'll call it 25 gigabytes. Like, that will take a full day before you even touch that.
And the average project is like
much more than 25 gigabytes.
No, well, it depends. From what I'm noticing recently, it's like 15 gigabytes to like 40 on average. Probably a little less than 40, but still, depending on the internet of the person, it takes them forever to download.
Yeah. And you can't do anything when you're like, if you have a deadline, that kind of comes back to the project management piece and just making sure the train keeps moving in the right direction. If you know that you're going to delegate and hand something off to somebody, you need to budget in that it's going to take them a day or two to download and get all the assets and just kind of get through that first mile of the project, which we've talked about before. that's the hardest piece. That's the piece where the mental chatter comes up, where you feel like you have to, I think the one line that captures this perfectly, not to ramble on, but I think there is this overwhelming feeling when you're a creative person that you're only as good as your last project. And that first mile, I find, is where that mental narrative and those stories come up the most, where you're like, something about this video and this project isn't clicking right now. And it's making me feel like I'm not as good as I used to be, that I can't produce this result for the client. And then it kind of gets in the way of being productive. So there's all these little like mental internal pieces that, to your point originally that we brought up at the start of the podcast, like you cannot be effective if you can't get through that first mile. And if a million other things, managing projects, delegating work, working with freelancers, if that kind of external work is getting in the way of you working, it is just going to lead to that kind of slippery slope or negative feedback loop where you're like, I'm a broken toy, I can't be fixed, and this project's just not going to work because I can't even get off the ground.
And we're back. Sorry, we had to get the
A
dog handled.
Dog situation. One day it's a dog, the next day it's a jackhammer on a basement reno gone wrong. It's life.
That's just the life of a homeowner. But so what I think has been hurting me a bit too is, okay, so you need to make money, but you also want to make the best work. And the way you get more money is you take on more projects or you charge more. I've just been taking on more projects, been charging relatively like my prices pre-COVID. But how can I make the best work and make sure I'm happy with the work I'm putting out while also taking on this high volume? That's also where I'm struggling, where like I'm finishing some projects. I'm like, I just had to get it done because there's a deadline. I need it done, but I'm not necessarily, I didn't let, a lot of times editing, you got to let your edit like sit for a day where you don't touch it, or a couple days, or revisit, watch some other stuff and come back, because that's when it becomes really good. People see my IG reels that I edited. It sometimes like it takes like 2 or 3 weeks to edit, just because I'm like, I just take a step back and I'm like, it's not working right now, I'll come back to that later, and boom, it's great. And that's personally where I'm at. I know that there's some people who can make banger pieces of content just in like 2 hours and they're happy with it, people love it right away. I'm just not that. And I don't know if that's something I can learn and gain that skill, or it's something that's just who I am. And maybe I'm not one of these creators who can just grind like that. Like I'm more of like a project manager or like a visualizer, and then I get people on a team to help me facilitate it, and then I put on my last cherry on top and make it what I want it to be.
And I don't think that it's one is better than the other or one is right or wrong situation. I think whatever works for you is going to work because it's unique to who you are and what you value as a person. But I also think there's a lot of pieces in that conversation of when you are feeling burnt out or not passionate about what you're doing. I think most often that comes not from working too many hours or just taking on too many projects. I see way more people burnt out because they're doing work that they don't think matters. And a piece of what we were talking about is that in your example, if you are putting out a video, and this is kind of more specific to me, but in your example, when you're putting out a video and you're not happy with the end result, that kind of ties into that piece of, I don't think that I'm putting out work that matters, even though I'm doing it because I know that I have to pay the bills. And I know that by taking on more work, I'm going to be able to raise my rates. The business, it's a focus on the business versus the creative. And those two things I always find are kind of in tension with each other. It's a balancing act.
But so, when you say like people burn out because they're doing stuff that they don't find meaningful, my head goes into like the devil's advocate, because everyone kind of thinks, oh, you're doing meaningless work, it's going to drive you crazy. But sometimes the meaningless shit is meaningless to you because that's the way you framed it in your mind. Like, what if you're looking at it as, all right, I have to do this stuff in my work because it's a necessary stepping stone, or it's essential for my client to get their goals and you need to help that. Like, how much is you thinking work isn't meaningful really just you being like, maybe coming from a place of, entitlement where you're like, I want to be making this music video for this person or doing this thing. It's like, you sometimes have to do work that's not going to be the most exciting because it's just like working out. You don't want to do these glute activations before you lift, but it's the healthy thing to do. But then again, it's like there is some work that's meaningless, like some random event video.
Absolutely.
That'll drive you crazy.
But I think the separation between meaningless work and work that is necessary to completing a project is being clear about what you're doing. Because for a long time, especially when I just started out, I would not even sniff or touch projects where I was like, we just need you to do this. And really, I'm a set of hands coming in, hands on keyboard, do what they say, blah, done. That work just didn't appeal to me because I wanted to shape it from my perspective or from how I saw the problem. But if you are clear about, okay, this is a business thing that I'm solving and they're going to pay me $500 or $1,000. Just be clear that you're doing that. It's going to be so much easier, and you're not going to have those feelings creep up of, oh my God, I'm just doing this because I'm making a buck, because you were clear about the expectations that you had with yourself going into the project. If you aren't clear about that, I think that's when you run into the challenges of, oh my God, like this freelancing thing, or it could be a job, is just a glorified 9 to 5.
Well, like, are you, when you hear me talking about my feelings and whatnot, like, how are you doing with? I mean, I feel like we're in different situations. You have, like, we have your full family in like a house. It's like there's space, there's places to go. In Toronto, it's a bit different. Like,
Yep.
are you handling your work in a healthy manner? Like, are you not feeling overwhelmed? Like, where are you standing these
So
days?
it's different. Like the short answer is that I think wherever you are, it depends on the context of what you're doing. So right now, the past week and a half has been super frustrating for me because I'm trying to take on a new piece of software. I'm trying to learn Webflow. Webflow is basically what Photoshop would be if you were designing websites. So it's like the interface is very similar. It's all visual in front of you. You can kind of manipulate it that way, which is so different than every decade that has come before in web development, because it was all through complex code. You had to understand the language of the computer. But what I found is that I'll have an idea in Photoshop where I can make something look how I want it to look. But then you get into the web development piece and you're like, this software is so foreign to me. I'm so much slower. I can't do things that I know how to achieve visually in another package. So that piece has been super frustrating. And also that whenever you move from one deliverable, so a static graphic or a keynote deck, to another deliverable or another industry or genre, this kind of goes back to this piece that you were talking about before, where on a video, if you're doing, because you've recently made a change, right? Like before COVID started, you were pretty much all sports videos. Is that fair?
Almost,
For the
yeah.
most part. It's a bit of a simplification, but for the most part.
The majority, for sure.
And then you move to, I guess, for lack of a better term, e-commerce stuff, food and beverage, consumer packaged goods. Like you're doing so much more, even though you're kind of still in the wellness track. And I think it would be fair to say, and I would love to get you to answer this quickly, like some of the stuff that you were able to do with sports doesn't map cleanly onto this new work that you're doing. Some of the effects, the footage is different. So there's a challenge there. It's not a one-to-one fit with the creative process. What would you say about that?
Honestly, the creative process isn't even the big thing. I think I'm noticing I'm like editing a lot more, and I'm sitting down inside a lot more, and I'm
Yeah.
not like getting out and moving. Like before, we would be editing in like editing suites, and I'd be going out. I can see people in the hallways. I can like go to like a restaurant. I could do whatever, and then maybe like I have to go do a shoot. Whereas that breaking up of the day and the moving and like getting up and talking, it's almost like it balanced out the
Yeah.
work. Even though in the moment sometimes I'd be like, oh, I'm wasting time moving and talking to people. It's like that's what gave me the longevity mentally to get things done properly.
So what I'm hearing is that the social piece and the balance piece is really important to how productive and how enjoyable the work feels. Is that fair?
I think so. And it's that level of collaboration. Like whenever you're doing some sort of art in this way, um, having people to bounce ideas off of or just even converse with, you start like you think like as you're like listening to someone talk, you like think of ideas you're doing.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like this reset state.
Whereas it's super insulated right now, where you don't kind of have,
Yeah.
it's not as easy to bounce ideas and collaborate with people.
No. And you have to make a phone call, and then people are like annoyed you're calling them because they're doing
Yeah.
shit. Whereas when it's in person, it's, hey Mose, let's go get like a snack and like walk to like Balzac's or something.
Perfect.
You know,
Let's do it. Yeah.
boom.
It's done. And
It's
that's
just
not there right now.
yeah. And like I spoke on with the Dave podcast last week, I've been inside so much. Like I'm such a sedentary person these days. And that doesn't just mean I don't go out for a 20-minute run or work out for an hour. Like that's not I mean, like if you just do that for an hour, you're still living a sedentary lifestyle. You're sitting still the majority of the day. Whereas before it's like I'm sitting and then I'm walking and then I go to a shoot, then I work out, then I like hang at someone's house. Like you're moving around. And like that's what I miss. I don't know. It's just I keep repeating myself, but you gotta have. It's kind of like those open concept offices that you see tech companies that they innovated, whatever it was, like 10 years ago. Like you need a space where you work that feels open. It's similar to if you're like an animal in the zoo. You need a certain amount of square kilometers to feel like okay in your space and to feel mentally there. There's a reason why. I forget the documentary about SeaWorld. It's like these giant whales were in large tanks, but not large enough for them to feel mentally okay. It's like humans as well. You can't be in a room or a house. Like you have to feel like you can go out and around and feel like your habitat is not confined. Yeah. And I found that a confined habitat right now with the COVID lockdowns, it's made me feel like this weird caged animal with like pent up energy and stress and anger and whatnot. Yeah. That I can't seem to let loose and let go. And it's affecting my productivity. I don't know how much of my work's being affected, like the quality, but it's just before I could bang out videos in like a day where I feel like I can accomplish things in a day. Now it's like, I feel like a useless piece of shit sometimes.
And I think not having that conversation with yourself or just like not bringing it up is probably like the worst thing that you can do if you want to look at the kind of mental health component of it or just wellness. So it's important that it just kind of gets out in the air, because if you're not having these conversations, I think that just kind of that feeling builds up. And the tough piece of it, for me at least, is that, and I've talked to family members and friends about this, Toronto is on track, I guess, right now to go back into lockdown after this third wave hits. But we're on this yo-yo, it feels like, of, okay, we lock down for a month and a half, 2 months, because we gotta kill this thing. There's too much spread. And then we tentatively open up. You get patios open, you get barbers and salons and nail salons, whatever. People start coming out. We get that kind of sense of hope. Oh, boom, things are coming back to normal. This is great. And then the cases start coming up again. And it's like, well, here's the wave after, and we're back into lockdown. So I just think there's a really unhealthy dynamic going on there. And interested to see kind of how that changes as vaccines roll out. I don't want to say whether you should take the vaccine or not. But like, it's just, we're in a kind of in between place right now. And I think one of the challenges of that is that there's that uncertainty piece that we hate as humans. We just want to know either way. Okay, you're going to be locked down for 6 months, and then after that, we're good. We'll have whatever, cases will come down. But when you have somebody and you say, okay, you can go outside to recess as lunch. We could talk about this in elementary school kind of context. You can go out for lunch for 30 minutes, and then you can come back. And you have a routine. You have an organized sense of how you're going to schedule a day. I think so much of that has been kind of thrown into limbo with COVID. And I've definitely felt it as well. What has happened for me, I'm rambling now, but what's happened for me is that there are some days in the week where I just don't have it. I'm like, oh my God, like my focus is in here. I just don't feel any motivation to jump into the work. And I never felt that before. It was always like, oh, this is the space that I'm going to work. There's clear boundaries around. You're going to spend 1 to 3 hours on this, and then you're good for the rest of the day. You don't have to think about the work, and you can release. You can just be, okay, whatever I didn't get accomplished, I am confident that I'll have the focus and the energy to go and attack this tomorrow. And it's good. You can relax. You don't have to keep thinking about this all night, which has definitely happened a lot more in COVID.
But when you talk about the uncertainty factor, that's one thing I love. I love uncertainty. That's why I like freelancing, is like, you don't know what the next project is. You don't know what's next, what's headed, because it would stress me out and I'd be unhappy. But then I remind myself, it is more exciting in life to not know what's next than to every day wake up. I know I'm going here and doing this and doing this. Like, I don't know if I don't like that life. Yeah. But there's a spectrum of like, of uncertainty. What's the word? Like, everyone has a threshold of like what they're comfortable with. With COVID, it feels like it's so out of our control, the uncertainty, that I'm not okay dealing with that level of uncertainty. I am okay dealing with that level when it comes to like regular life and not knowing what project's next. But when it comes to, we sign up for a project, we book this thing, we're doing this, and all of a sudden COVID, and we lock down, and I'm like, what the fuck? It's taking me in and out of this focused state
Absolutely.
so often. That's kind of scaring me. Like, I can feel like my personality and my psyche changing with COVID. Like, I don't feel like I'm the same person I once was, in a very scary way, when it comes to motivation and it comes to like desire to complete things that I set myself out to do.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I agree. It's kind of feeling the same thing on my end. And this is not a one size fits all solution, but what I have found has helped is that anytime that you can insert some level of control or routine or practice into your day, I think it just helps stabilize what's going on when everything around you is really chaotic. So a really simple, actionable example for me, at least, is whenever I feel my focus or energy slip, if I'm in a work session, I've booked off 3 hours to get something done. Whenever I feel myself slip within that 3 hour time slot, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to set a timer on my phone for 5 minutes. I'm going to do a circuit of 3 push-ups, 3 chin-ups, air squats, whatever. And I'm going to work up on a ladder. I'm going to start with 3, then I'm going to go to 4, and I'm going to see how many times I can get through in 5 minutes. Something light. Like, I'm not there to burn out my body, but it's just like anytime you can have some kind of ritual or structure around your day, I feel like that helps, because then I can go into the day knowing that there's going to be a ton of uncertainty around what people, who's going to call me. Is a client going to call me? Am I going to get progress? Like, there's so much uncertainty around that. Anytime that you can inject some stability in your life, I think, at least in my example, my experience rather, it's really helped me kind of center or balance myself.
But the hard thing is, it doesn't feel that chaotic where I need to do this. Like, my life doesn't feel, it's like this weird lack of chaos, realistically, that mentally it's chaotic, not knowing what's going on. But if I look around, I'm just fucking at home chilling. There's nothing's chaotic. I'm not always going. Like, pre-COVID, I'd be meditating a lot and working out, and that centered my chaotic life of just constantly flying around the city and editing and shooting. Now it's like I'm in home and my mind is chaotic, but my life is not chaotic. So,
and that's a weird disconnect.
It's the fucking weirdest disconnect, because I don't feel like I need to do anything to center me, but realistically you do. That sounded really dumb, but
I almost think about it as like a simmering 6. So if you think about yourself on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being I'm good, I feel good about what I'm doing, I have some peace of mind, and then 1 being, oh my God, this is terrible, the world's falling down, the sky's falling, whatever. It's that, I think so when it's a 1 or you're feeling really low, that's when you know something's wrong and you reach out to a friend, you do whatever coping mechanism you do. And it's really obvious. There's that kind of benefit to it. You know that you need some kind of change immediately. The danger territory, I would say, is the problem that you're experiencing right now. It's that 6 where you're like, I don't feel great. I don't feel terrible. I don't think that I have to do anything. And if you get in that simmering 6 too long, I think that's when real mental health, physical health, whatever way you want to describe it, I think that's when serious problems start cropping up. Because you're not being proactive with how you kind of engage with that. And you don't have any language or toolkit or frameworks around how you want to kind of deal with that situation or work with yourself.
Boom. I like just talk, like whenever we have these conversations, I always feel 10 times better. And I guess that's one thing, is just fucking reach out to people and just talk. And even if it's not in person, just something, it always makes me feel better.
Absolutely.
But I definitely, let's wrap this up. Really good episode. Make sure to follow us on @RnRP podcast on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, everything. Make sure to follow us. We're still making content, almost at, what are we at? Like 8 months now. I can't believe it's lasted this long.
It's crazy.
Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Okay. Sorry. Right before we close, one bit, and maybe you can put this before, one bit. Erica Nardini, CEO of Barstool, her words exactly, thinks podcasts are dead.
Wow, what a way to end the podcast. Hot fucking take. All right, guys.
Podcasts are dead.
See ya. Ciao.